In this video, we will walk through why linking your MitID properly is not just a technical formality, but a critical step for maintaining robust accounting and legal compliance in Denmark. As digital infrastructure has become the backbone of both public and private services, MitID has effectively become your secure gateway to the Danish ecosystem of authorities, financial institutions, and business platforms. Understanding its role and the consequences of using it incorrectly or not at all is essential if you are a business owner, a finance professional, or a legal or compliance manager operating in Denmark. Let us start with the basics. MitID is your personal and business digital identity. For private individuals, it is used for everything from online banking to interactions with SCAT and other public authorities. For companies, MitID Erverv functions as the controlled access point through which owners, board members, and employees can act on behalf of the legal entity. When we talk about linking your MitID in a compliance context, we are really talking about correctly establishing and maintaining the relationship between a person's MitID and the specific roles and mandates they hold in a company or professional capacity. This could be as a director registered in the Danish Business Authority's systems, as a signatory for bank accounts, or as an employee granted access to submit VAT, payroll, or corporate tax filings. From an accounting perspective, this linkage is central to ensuring a clean, auditable trail of who has done what, when, and on whose authority. Modern accounting systems in Denmark rely heavily on integrations with NemID and MitID infrastructure, the NemKonto system, and digital post solutions such as eBox. When a person logs in using their MitID to submit a VAT return, approve a financial statement, or access digital correspondence from SCAT, they are not just identifying themselves, they are also exercising a legal mandate on behalf of the company. Properly linking MitID to the correct roles ensures that these activities are correctly attributed and that any subsequent reconciliation, audit, or regulatory review can rely on a clear and trustworthy digital footprint. If this linkage is weak or poorly managed, it can create significant risk. For example, if an employee's MitID is used to file statutory reports without a formally granted role in MitID Erverv, you may later struggle to demonstrate that this person was authorized to act on behalf of the company at that time. In an audit or tax inspection, this can translate into questions about governance, internal controls, and potentially even the validity of filings. In a worst-case scenario, inadequate control over MitID access can enable unauthorized transactions, fraudulent payments, or misstatements of financial information. Legal compliance risk is equally significant. Danish law places clear responsibilities on management and board members for ensuring accurate reporting and proper internal controls. Authorities increasingly assume that these responsibilities are reflected and enforced through digital access structures. That means your MitID setup needs to match the reality described in your corporate documents and in the Danish Business Register. If an individual is registered as a director or signatory, but their MitID is not connected to corresponding roles in your banking, accounting, and authority-facing systems, you may encounter delays in approvals, rejected filings, or challenges when trying to enter new agreements. Conversely, if someone who has left the company still has active MitID-based access to systems, you are exposed to clear governance and data protection issues. There is also a broader regulatory dimension. Anti-money laundering rules, data protection requirements under GDPR, and internal control frameworks all assume that access to sensitive financial and personal data is restricted on a need-to-know basis. MitID serves as one of the principal mechanisms to operationalize that requirement in Denmark. By linking MitID correctly to defined roles, you can embed the principles of segregation of duties and least privilege into your daily workflows. For instance, the person preparing vendor payments in your accounting system does not necessarily need the same level of MitID-based access as the person who ultimately approves and releases those payments through online banking. Structuring your access model around MitID roles helps enforce this separation in a traceable and auditable way. For advisory firms, accounting houses, and law firms, MitID linkage is particularly important. When acting on behalf of clients, you must ensure that your staff have MitID-based mandates that are explicitly granted by the client company. Only then can they submit reports, access tax information, or manage official digital correspondence on that client's behalf. Without clear and documented digital mandates, there is a risk that your work, even if technically correct from a content perspective, could be challenged on formal grounds. Likewise, clients increasingly expect their advisors to demonstrate rigorous handling of digital identities as part of a broader risk and compliance framework. Practically speaking, what should companies do to get this right? First, conduct a structured review of who currently uses MitID to access business-critical systems, accounting, payroll, banking, tax portals, e-box, and other authority platforms. Map each user's access to their formal role and responsibilities in the organization. Second, align this mapping with what is registered in official sources, such as the Danish Business Register, your Articles of Association, and your internal authorization policies. Ensure that the individuals who have MitID-based authority to bind the company digitally actually hold the corresponding formal roles. Third, implement a clear onboarding and offboarding process. When someone joins, define their MitID-related access based on role, and ensure that these rights are formally granted and documented. When someone leaves or changes role, revoke or adjust their access promptly. This is not only good practice, it is an important control expected by auditors and regulators. Fourth, communicate to employees that using MitID is not just logging in, but an act with legal significance. They should understand that sharing credentials is unacceptable, that they must protect their MitID devices and codes, and that any action taken using their MitID is attributable to them personally. Finally, review your agreements with external advisors and service providers. Confirm that their use of MitID on your behalf is properly governed by mandates, power of attorney arrangements, and data processing agreements, and that you have visibility into who, within those firms, is exercising digital authority in your name. In summary, linking your MitID correctly is a foundational element of doing business compliantly in Denmark. It underpins the integrity of your accounting records, strengthens your internal control environment, and supports your ability to demonstrate proper governance to auditors, banks, and authorities. By treating MitID as a strategic compliance tool rather than a mere login method, you can reduce risk, improve operational efficiency, and build stronger trust with stakeholders. If you have not yet reviewed your MitID structure, consider making it a priority agenda item in your next management or board meeting, and involve your finance, legal, and IT functions in designing a robust, future-proof setup.